What a wonderful time of year. And yes, of course, I'm talking about the NBA playoffs, specifically the 2022 NBA playoffs, because we're finally back to a little bit of normality, not completely, but a little bit, and a little bit of regularity. And I'm super excited for these playoffs. It's been a phenomenal season, back to the 82 game stretch, and it's just been great watching NBA basketball all season long. And if you guys are excited for today's video and also the NBA playoffs in general, please leave a like on today's video. Also consider subscribing to the channel. We're up around that 8,000 subscribers mark, and it'd be awesome to have you be a part of the gang here at Utility Sports. So again, thank you all so much for the continued support. Now let's go ahead and jump into my actual playoff predictions here. And we'll start by looking at the actual bracket. So there's a few things to highlight. Let's start with the play-in tournament because there's going to be some questions about this. So 7-8 in the West is Minnesota versus the Clippers. The Clippers are going to go into Minnesota on Tuesday night. I am recording this on Sunday night. I actually was at the Timberwolves game live in person against the Chicago Bulls. Neither team really played their best players. So the Wolves are going to be rested. And the Clippers are going to be slightly rested as well. Amir Coffey went off for 35 in their final game. And whoever wins that game is the 7th seed and would play Memphis. Okay, and then 9-10, we have Pelicans versus San Antonio. Winner of that game would play the loser of Minnesota versus LA. And then the winner of that 9-10 versus the loser of 7-8, the winner of that game right here, which I'm hovering over with my mouse, you should be able to see this, would go on to be the 8th seed here with a win. Loser goes home. And the same is true over here. 7-8, Brooklyn versus Cleveland. Whoever wins that game is the 7th seed. And then 9-10 gets to have the shot after winning to play the loser of the 7-8 game to be the 8th seed. That's how the play-in works for anyone who is still curious. And now we're going to jump into my actual predictions here, starting with the play-in. I'm going to predict the play-in. And yes, I am guessing I will be wrong at some point in this video. If I'm wrong, I get it. Okay, you know, everyone makes mistakes. Very possible I make a mistake in today's video. Hopefully that doesn't sway your opinion of me too much, especially since I'm going to be applying reasoning as to why I think certain teams win and certain teams lose. Again, very possible I'm wrong, but I'm going to be giving my thoughts and analysis. Number 9 versus number 10, we got the Pelicans versus the Spurs. And this is one game elimination. And for me, it's hard to bet against Greg Popovich, but that's what I'm going to do. I might come back to regret this, but I am picking the New Orleans Pelicans, led by first-year head coach Willie Green. The reason why I'm picking New Orleans is because they have a little bit more consistent scoring output from some of their best players. CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, for example. Those two guys, I just don't think San Antonio has anyone that can match their scoring input. Specifically, you know, you look at DeJounte Murray, I picked him for most improved player. So Spurs fans know I do not hate the Spurs. I think that the Spurs have really played well this year, actually, despite some of the issues that they've had. You know, losing DeMar DeRozan's tough. Moving on from Thad Young during the season. They've overcome a lot, and I think you've seen a lot of promise from these young guys. But I think New Orleans is slightly more ready, specifically with some of their veterans. You know, Brandon Ingram is fairly well into his career, and CJ McCollum as well. He's been a professional bucket getter for some time now. So New Orleans, I take their scoring and I take their, you know, their veteran leadership a little bit over what San Antonio's currently got, even though it's terribly difficult to bet against Popovich. Moving into the 7-8 matchup, Minnesota versus the Clippers. And if you guys have been around the channel, you know exactly what I'm picking here. This is the Los Angeles Clippers. They're going to go into the Target Center in Minneapolis and storm the building. And the Timberwolves are going to lose this 7-8 matchup, which is going to be a really big deal. And we're going to talk about why here. But the reason I have the Clippers beating Minnesota, when you look at Minnesota, the defense that they run, I know they're going to be rested, but so are the Clippers. The Wolves are liable to one thing, and that is three-point shooting. The way that they play defense, whether that's when they're dropping Karl Anthony Towns or when they're using him to blitz, which has been their most common pick and roll defense specifically, which is what the Clippers are going to look to do a lot offensively, they're going to blitz. And the issue here is when you're going to blitz Paul George, or you're going to blitz Reggie Jackson, they've got enough shooting and enough spacing around that they're going to be able to share the ball, share the love, and knock down a whole bunch of open shots. When you run a blitzing defense, you leave yourself liable to, you know, shooting nights where you could just be out of it from the get-go. And for me, I am projecting here that the Clippers shoot the ball well. They have a lot of shooters on the floor consistently. Kennard, Morris, Batum. I mean, almost everyone on this team can shoot minus Zubats. Even Hartenstein this year has been shooting the ball fairly well. So you look at the Clippers here, and I mean, if the Wolves do drop back into a drop defense with Towns, Paul George is going to eat. He's done it in the past against Minnesota, and I would expect that to continue if they do play that style, but I would expect the blitzing style, and I just think the Clippers match up way too well here, and I think the Clippers lock up the 7th seed. Moving on then to the Wolves versus Pelicans. Remember, this is to get the 8th seed here, and this is very tough, and to be honest, neither of these teams want to be in this position to go play Phoenix in round 1, because no one should want to play Phoenix all playoffs long. And here I actually have the Pelicans winning again. And again, you might be wondering why. The Pelicans don't have the shooting that the Clippers do. You're right, but they have more length and athleticism, specifically from the wing spots. When you look at guys like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, who's starting to figure things out closer to the end of the season. Again, Brandon Ingram's going to be a tough cover. The style that Minnesota plays when it's scouted against is somewhat fracturable. And I think that that's going to come back to bite them here. It's been instrumental in having a great season. Patrick Beverley deserves a lot of love for all defense. But I ultimately think the Timberwolves actually miss out on the playoffs despite a very nice 46-36 season. It would be disappointing in Minnesota, but remember, expectations coming in were to at least get in the play-in, not be a 7 seed, and hopefully, maybe even win the first round. So expectations have shifted in Minnesota for sure, but I think that maybe they've shifted a little too soon. I think the Clippers beat them, and then I also think New Orleans comes into the Target Center and beats them as well. Very possible I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, you can hold it over my head. That'd be awesome. Moving into the East, we've got Atlanta versus Charlotte, 9-10. And for me here, it is very, very difficult to bet against a Trae Young-led Atlanta Hawks team in a one-game playoff scenario. We've seen it in the past. Trae Young, if he's on, he can beat almost anybody. He took the Bucks deep, really put a lot of pressure on the other teams he played last year in the playoffs as well, made the Knicks look like an absolute disaster. For me, I'm picking Atlanta, and I think Trae Young is just too good. Honestly, with him, it's just, I don't want to bet against Trae Young. LaMelo Ball's young, Miles Bridges is young. I think the Hornets have a really nice future. I think Atlanta's a little bit more ready, and I think Trae Young, probably the best player in that game, and I don't even really think it's that close. Moving on to 7-8, Brooklyn versus Cleveland. Again, for the same reason here, I'm going to take Brooklyn. They got the best player in the game between these two teams in Kevin Durant, and they probably have the second best player as well in Kyrie Irving. So this game is in Brooklyn. The lifting of the vaccine mandate definitely helps them here as well because Kyrie's going to be available. And ultimately, when you have Kevin Durant, you have Kyrie Irving, and you need to win one game, you probably win the one game. I think the Brooklyn Nets go on to be the 7th seed to take on the Boston Celtics in round 1. And then the matchup here between the Hawks and Cavaliers, again, this is a very tough one. And, I don't want to make Cavaliers fans mad, but this has been a really, really tough season for you guys because you've overcome so much, but the injuries, they've just piled up. And to me, Atlanta's healthier. Atlanta has more playoff experience. They're a little bit older. And again, I still think they have the best player in this matchup for a one-game play-in, where you look at Trae Young, Darius Garland's really improved. And you look at Jared Allen, who's really improved. And Evan Mobley's been such a blessing for this Cavaliers team. And this is the thing here for me with Cleveland. This isn't the end of the world if you miss the playoffs. You have a really bright, great future, regardless of what happens this postseason. So for me, I am picking Atlanta to actually be the 8th seed and take on Miami. Now into the actual playoffs, we got Phoenix here versus the 8th seed, who I deem to be New Orleans. This is a 4-0 sweep. Phoenix wins, not even close. Phoenix is arguably the best team in the league. Chris Paul, way too good. The Pelicans are going to get run off the floor. Jonas Valanciunas is not going to look playable in this series because of how good Booker and Paul are in the mid-range area. And I'm telling you right now, this series would not be close. Maybe Zion returning would slightly change things, but again, I don't really see this. Maybe it's a gentleman's sweep in 5, but I have it as a hard sweep in 4. Miami versus the 8th seed, which I deem to be Atlanta. So I actually had both 9 seeds making it. We did see that happen last year with the Memphis Grizzlies. Now here for what I see with the Miami Heat versus the Atlanta Hawks. This is the nightmare matchup for Atlanta. You get a hyper-physical team against a team that wants to win based off of skill, and speed, and three-point shooting. And for me, I think Miami coasts in this one, probably wins in 5, maybe 6. Trae Young's good enough to push a series. So I could see Trae Young, giving us a little bit of drama in a 1-8 matchup. It's a very interesting matchup for sure, but I think Miami probably would come out on top. They're just more physical. They've got more bodies to throw. I think they got a little bit more depth. I'm interested to see how their postseason scoring looks, specifically when Tyler Hero's not on the floor. But I think with Miami's experience, Spoelstra's coaching experience, they probably win this series comfortably. Moving on to 4-5, Dallas versus Utah. And this is one that I thought was going to be obvious until Luka Doncic strained his left calf, and now this is way up in the air. And I think the Mavericks win in 7 games because I think Luka is going to be a little hobbled at the start of the series and probably not quite his full self. He does have about 3 or 4 days here to recover, but a left calf strain is something that could keep someone out for a couple weeks if they weren't feeling good on it. But I think Luka is going to play. And let's be honest about it, when Luka plays in the playoffs, he's arguably the best player in the world. He averages roughly 35 points a game in the postseason, and he was doing that against the Clippers, who had Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on him, with Marcus Morris also throwing cheap shots. I'm sorry, Utah doesn't have anyone like that on the perimeter defensively. Royce O'Neal isn't stopping Luka Doncic. Yes, Rudy Gobert has had his moments against Luka, but ultimately, if Luka can play at all, I think the Mavericks are the better team here. I think they have more flexibility playing small with Dorian Finney-Smith at center, and I think that they could probably run Utah off the floor. Now, Utah's a really fun playoff team because Donovan Mitchell's so good as well. I don't want to make it seem like this is a wrap or a walk in the park here. Utah is really good. I think there's a lot of tension there, though. And I also think that there's a lot of high level leverage pressure. And if Rudy Gobert isn't utilized offensively, I think that Danny Ainge ultimately breaks them up. 4-5 here, Philadelphia versus Toronto. And we have a key thing to talk about here, which is the fact that Matisse Thybulle, star defensive player for Philadelphia, cannot play road games. So he will be ineligible for games 3 and 4 in Toronto. The reason why is he's not vaccinated, and to play in Canada right now, you need to be vaccinated. It's not just a home mandate, it is a total game mandate. So his lack of vaccination does make him ineligible. Again, I'm not taking a stance on that. That is just reporting. So for this game now, with Philadelphia here at 4, I think this is actually a really interesting series that maybe even goes 6 games because there's a contrast in styles here. Philly, hyper offense with some good defensive capabilities, but when you don't have Matisse Thybulle, you are limited defensively. And the thing that Philly doesn't have is length, and the thing that Toronto has the most of is length. So I think this is a very intriguing matchup. And if you're a team that wants to throw stuff at Joel Embiid and you want to throw stuff at James Harden, you're probably begging for length and you're begging for a defensive-minded head coach. Toronto has both here in Nick Nurse and the length of Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent. The list goes on, Chris Boucher. I mean, this team's got all of it. Thad Young as well, who they traded for. They've got a lot of length. So I think they can actually push this series maybe to 6 games. And the interesting thing here is this is a rematch of the team that knocked out Philadelphia when they had Jimmy Butler, when Kawhi Leonard hit that famous four hit shot on the rim. But they don't have Kawhi Leonard this time. I'm picking Philadelphia, but I think this is actually a little bit of a slugfest here in this series because I think Toronto has enough length, size, and I think Nick Nurse is a smart enough defensive coach to really kind of scramble things between Embiid and Harden. But ultimately, Philly just is more talented, especially on the offensive end of the floor. I think Toronto's going to have a little bit of shortcoming offensively, and I think that's just enough. We'll see how Van Vliet plays, though. He's been an absolute baller in the postseason before. And if he plays his best basketball, I would not be shocked if Toronto wins. But again, I am picking Philly in 6. Moving on, Golden State versus Denver. And this is a very tough matchup to project right now because, we have Nikola Jokic and the band of role players around him with no other, co-star right now with MPJ out and also the absence of Jamal Murray. But what you do have there is Aaron Gordon, who's been a phenomenal fit. Monte Morris is a good guard. And then Will Barton's probably going to be the X factor in this series. And then from Golden State, again, Steph Curry's out. So you have some questions about who's going to be healthy. For me, I'm going to pick Golden State in 6. They have not been playing their best basketball as of late, but they've still been really good this season. And I think they are very deserving of that 3 seed that they've earned. And had they stayed healthy, maybe would have competed with Phoenix around that 64-65 win mark. So for me, I am taking Golden State here in about 5 or 6 games. And then Memphis here are actually moving on to Milwaukee versus Chicago. This one feels easy to me. I'm picking Milwaukee, and it's tough. And Chicago fans, I don't want to make it seem like you guys had a bad season. You didn't. You're kind of in the same camp that Cleveland was, where you got really, really beat up with injuries this year. And of course, that's going to be the struggle the first year you put a really good group of guys together, because you don't really have the flexibility to add more depth. I think they come back after this offseason, add more good players onto the end of their bench, and really, open themselves up. You're also going to have Patrick Williams all season next year, hopefully. And he looked really, really good as well in that game against the Timberwolves. So I think Patrick Williams is going to be a nice piece going forward. But ultimately, I don't think that this is Chicago's year. I see them losing in 5 to Milwaukee in round 1. The Bucks, I think they're dangerous. They're going to look to repeat. Moving on to the 2 versus 7, which of course is the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Los Angeles Clippers. And I have the Clippers winning in 6. I think the Los Angeles Clippers are a better team than Memphis. One thing, and a lot of people are going to maybe be like, whoa, you're taking a big upset here. Memphis led the regular season in blocks, steals, and rebounds. One thing that was evident anytime you turned on Memphis, you know that team was competing with all of their heart. They were working their tails off, and they were playing every single game like it was the Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Okay, once the intensity is lifted from the other team to match that level, you have to wonder about Memphis's half-court offense. Are they going to have some of the same limitations they had last year? How does Jaren Jackson at center hold up against a small ball team in the Los Angeles Clippers? And also, again, the size and length of the Clippers, I think, is going to be very instrumental for throwing at Ja Morant. If I'm Memphis, I would be hoping Minnesota wins the 7-8 matchup, because I would much rather play the Wolves than the Clippers, especially now. You look at the Clippers, I mean, they went above 500, and Paul George missed, 3/4 of the season, and Kawhi Leonard hasn't played. That's how good the depth is on this team. And then also Norm Powell broke his foot and is back now. So they haven't had arguably their 3 best players for a majority of the season. And they're still in a position where they can make some noise. They've got some good depth. They've got some good players around Paul George. And ultimately, Paul George, to me, probably the most skilled player in this series. I think Ja Morant's getting there, but I think Paul George a little bit more playoff ready this season. And then 2 versus 7 on this side, of course, that's Boston versus Brooklyn. And Boston fans, if you're still here supporting the channel, especially after my last playoff prediction video, I really do appreciate you. I was sleeping on you guys. You were in the midst of a winning streak, and I thought maybe this is a little fluky. It was right after the trade deadline that I made that video. And if you're still sticking with me, I owe you guys an apology, because you have been absolutely awesome. And the Celtics deserve a lot of credit. I see the Celtics winning this in 5 games. Facing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is a nightmare first-round matchup, but the Celtics have the defense to do it. They are phenomenal on that end of the floor. Marcus Smart is going to annoy both Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and we know how Kyrie feels about playing in Boston. I think that Boston Celtic fandom gets under his skin a little bit. We'll see if there's any incidents with him wiping his feet on the Celtic logo there at half court again, but I think the Celtics here should be favored over Brooklyn. I know it's a tough matchup with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, but let's be honest, the Nets can't guard anybody. And I think you also have the better coach in Ime Udoka. I think the Celtics have a lot of advantages. They don't have the best player in the series, but they have a really great collection of players. And Jason Tatum is still that dude as well. So he's led a team in the playoffs before. This has been my playoff predictions for the first round and the play-in. I will be keeping you updated on more in the future here with the playoffs as well. Of course, I'm so excited to watch these games. And if you wanted to know my favorites right now to come out of each conference, in the West, I would choose Phoenix. And in the East, I would choose Milwaukee. Those are my picks right now. And that is a switch up from my last playoff video as well. Phoenix, they pulled away, and they've really impressed me down the stretch again. So they've got every little element you would want, and I'd probably choose Phoenix as the favorites to win it this year. However, Milwaukee, very dangerous. And I think really this is the most parity we've had in the league, because I don't think Phoenix, Milwaukee are obvious choices. I just think that those would be the 2 I would go with. Again, hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a like. Also, comment your predictions and your finals favorites in the comment section. Again, thanks so much, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Check out our other videos, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.